All right. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. Really excited to bring to you today my guest. I've had many conversations where we had this game of intellectual ping pong that's gone back and forth. This is really important because today we're faced with a number of different disruptions. We have AI disruptions, we have political disruptions, we have economic disruptions, we have competitive disruptions. We have all sort of disruptions, regardless of the industry that you're in right now. If there's one thing I'm confident in is that your industry, if it hasn't already been disrupted, it will be disrupted. And even if it has been disrupted, there's going to be these frequent disruption events that are going to be happening at least for the next few years. So we're going to talk about this, why it's something you shouldn't be afraid of, rather how you can embrace it and how you can leverage AI to help you take advantage of all these things and work with it as opposed to against it. Now, the other little hidden secret about my guest is he's also the gentleman who edits and produces this podcast. So you'll notice the sound quality and the editing, all that other fun stuff. That's a result of this particular gentleman. He works with many of the who's in the podcast world, one of the OGs, if you want to call it, in podcasting. His client list reads like a celebrity list. He's also done Amplify AI, and Amplify AI is one of his core focuses right now. And he's worked with some extraordinary people like Gary Vee as well, which is really cool. So we're going to get to my guest in a second. Just as a reminder, if you're looking for more tips, strategies, and information on how to grow your business, also check us out at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. You can get a growth assessment and all that other fun stuff, a bunch of free resources over at predictableprofits.com. Now, on to the guest. All right, my man, Ronsley Vaz, welcome to the show, buddy.
Charlie, how are you? It's great to be back.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, this is our second time chatting on the podcast.
It is.
Lots changed.
I think lots have changed, hey, in terms of how the world works, how business works, what's getting results. A lot of things have changed.
You know, the funny thing is even if you and I were to talk last week, which we did actually, but even if we recorded this last week, we could have actually said the same thing.
It's true. I mean, I think it largely depends on how you get your news and where you get your news from. And if it affects you that you want to be the first to everything. And I think that's the way the media works. It's constantly telling you what you're missing out on. I think there's an element there that actually gets in the way of us actually doing our useful or impactful stuff because we're always sort of chasing this thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think with intelligence and information, the news is getting to us quicker on how fast things are changing. So maybe there's an element of us felt like we're getting left behind, but most often it's not the case.
Yeah. Well, and the pace of the way that the world is moving, I don't know if you saw, but just the new release on ChatGPT even happened this morning, where now the API agents, and so forth and how that works.
Yeah.
Every time we turn around, there's this other big release of something. Look, we're always going to be a little bit behind AI. I mean, because of the pace that everything's moving and all the different technologies and so forth. But that actually doesn't necessarily mean that the business is behind. The technology itself is growing at an exponential rate, will continue to grow at an exponential rate. But all you have to worry about is how are you positioned in your industry compared to everybody else? And if you look at most people in the industry, if we just look at AI and take everything else out, they're still focused in on, we use AI to create content, to write an email, to write an article. And that's about the basic level. If you do anything beyond that, you're already ahead of probably 98% of all other small business owners.
Yeah, I feel like because everyone's focused on AI and are looking at, and everyone's reporting as well on AI, they're feeling like they have to implement the newest and greatest stuff. But at the end of the day, for the people that we serve, Charlie, in particular, all we should be caring about is how more accurately and more effectively and more efficiently can we deliver the promise we are making on our websites. So if we're saying that we deliver X, Y, and Z and transformation to these kind of people, then are we using the dated information? And the school system is a great example of that, right? So we're still sending our kids to school to study something that we know is outdated because we don't have a better option. And everyone's ignoring that fact that, first of all, especially in the States, schools are more unsafe than they've ever been. They're not really teaching them much. And, you're actually sending your kid to school and with the hope that they'll come back home and they'll come back smarter. But, you can get that smartness of what we thought was smart for less than $20 a month. So there's a lot changing, and I think it's key to probably set a foundation here and say, what's the goal? And for me, I feel like for us entrepreneurs, we got into entrepreneurship to solve meaningful problems.
Yeah.
So if we are saying that we're going to solve this meaningful problem and this is the outcome we're delivering, are we doing everything we can to deliver that outcome more effectively, more efficiently, more ethically, quicker, faster? Are we solving for the last person? Because not long ago, the statement was, well, they're just not my client, or they just don't get what we're doing. And now you can solve for that person as well if you've already taken them on as a client. So, there's obviously elements there. But when I started in computer science, my first job out of university was programming a tractor to wake up in the morning and plow the field without anyone in it using GPS and then park itself at the end of the day. So this was out a long, long time ago. It's just that we're finding out the advancements really more now than we've ever, because everyone's reporting on AI and trying to get the quick sell, I suppose.
Yeah, I've mentioned this a few times in this podcast. My son, he's 18, and he's now saying, what do I do as I graduate from high school? And my advice to him was that, the interesting thing is that when I was a kid, if you wanted an advantage, you had to go to school, right? You had to go to college, and that was going to be the advantage that you have in life. But that's different today, and it's only been different over the last couple of years, because the advantage isn't going to be the person who has all the answers. The advantage is going to go to the person that knows how to ask the right questions. And so oftentimes we're limited by our imagination, right? I don't know that people really fully understand the grasp of what that means. Like, you are limited by your imagination. And so if you know how to ask the right questions, you're going to get the right answers. And the funny thing is that when you sit with people and you hear the questions that people are asking, they're very surface level questions. And so there's very little advantage when everybody's asking the same question. But when you know how to go much deeper than that and really stretch it, that's when you're going to get those breakthrough results.
And that imagination is a really good way to explain that. If I asked you, Charlie, hey, can you imagine what a deserted island looks like? You've probably never been to a deserted island, but you can
No.
imagine what that looks like based on being to a beach, being on an island, so on and so, because your experience allows you to imagine a deserted island.
Right.
But if I ask you to, Charlie, imagine the 12th moon of Jupiter, super hard, no
Right.
experience, lack of what's on the planet. Some say it's full of diamonds. I'm not sure how true that is, but even if that is the case, right? You see how a lack of imagination or experience. So in the same way, you're absolutely right. And again, if you look at entrepreneurship as in general, the biggest jump is going from solopreneur to entrepreneur,
Yep.
because from solopreneur to entrepreneur, you bring all these extra elements into it, like operations and culture and process and so many elements of recruitment that come into play that a solopreneur is not really trained on yet. So the same goes with AI. And the biggest jump from solopreneur to entrepreneur is because we cannot adequately express what's in our heads to this new person, whether the first person we hired, second person we hire. We kind of have this idea that they should know these things. So there's this gap or this alignment. It's called the value alignment problem, and it's been happening in computer science for ages. It's the inability to express entirely and correctly what's in our heads. It's the same thing happens with AI. If you are only seeing what the bro marketers are doing, which is all marketing,
Yeah.
that's why the imagination only goes there. Let me just use it for content. But I feel for the people that really care about delivery, because there's two types of entrepreneurs, and in
Yep.
your experience, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is the ones that care about attract and convert, who are not really good at delivery, but they're really good at attract and convert. And they are very strong there. And then the other ones who are very strong at delivery, but not good at attract and convert. I feel like even for the people that are good at delivery and not good at attract and convert, being exposed to the bro marketers is a huge advantage, because you can now execute that at speed, being the person you are in terms of being focused on delivery, because you can actually get some of the tactics that they're using, because they don't know much
Yeah.
at all. They are just saying enough to get the attention. And they're simplifying it in a way that the people who care about delivery don't. So we complicate things and we're trying to express ourselves and we make it too hard and have all these extra things that we say. And you know what? AI can help with everything from attract to convert to deliver to scale to operations to recruitment, communication. It's just up to you to decide or to actually stop and think what's held my business back all this time. Where can I go with AI to actually go past that point that I've not been able to do before?
So I want to go actually back to your example of the 12th moon of Jupiter, right? So here's the interesting thing, right? So I never knew that there was a 12th moon of Jupiter. I didn't even know that there were moons around Jupiter, number one, right? If I'm honest. Number two, I never heard the rumor that there were diamonds on Jupiter as well.
Mm,
But see, this is where context comes into place because right now in our immediate future where AI is going to replace all humans,
mm,
AI will replace the humans that are simply book educated and everything that they learn is between the binders of the book because that's AI is learning everything from that book, and it's if you only stay within the constraints of the binders, that's you're limited. But the thing is the reason why I bring up the Jupiter moons is because, like business, you know, what you just did is you identified an opportunity that I didn't know. There was moons. Then you went far enough to go, but there's an opportunity in the 12th moon, and on the 12th moon that there's potentially could be diamonds. And that's the difference for those people that, if their competitive landscape is we want to go from point A to point B, are they recognizing an opportunity that most people don't see, the moons and the diamonds? And so a lot of that is going to come back and forth to, again, how you use AI and the level of questions. So, one, context is really important. I could sit there and we could have somebody else who's also, I work with the founder of Planet Fitness, right? And so, he could be sitting next to me. And so he's got extraordinary business experience, a brilliant mind, and then myself. And we could both use AI, we could both ask different questions, and we're going to both come to different conclusions simply because he's got his context and then I have my context. And then to elaborate on your point, then when you bring two people together and we say, okay, hey, let's have a discussion about your view of the world and then my view of the world, we create a third reality that both he and I never even considered before. And it's those different realities and those different contextual moments when we talk about how do you go ahead and expand your imagination. The combination of those two experiences create a third reality that most people aren't talking about. You and I, right now, you and I, and the reason why I enjoy this game of intellectual ping pong is you bring people together who have respected experiences. We have a discussion. You have your reality. I have my reality. We turn around to a third uncharted reality, and it allows us to come up with something new. Now, you could do that with AI too. AI could be that thought partner, where I've brought in Jeff Bezos, I brought in Steve Jobs, I brought in Elon Musk, and I've had debates, intellectual ping pong with them on AI to come up with another reality. That part there just fascinates me because it allows you to forecast different events like how could this industry be disrupted by the year 2030? What are some possible solutions to maintain an advantage? What are some of the things that I'm not seeing? What about this role? How would the admin assistant, how would B2B salesperson, how will outbound marketing, how will all this stuff change so that you actually see a path in front of you
mhm.
rather than being in a dark room, taking one step in front of the other and just hoping you don't fall down the stairs.
I love this example and I love the intellectual ping pong you talk about because I wrote my thesis on process quality. I've taken two companies to ISO 9001, and the thesis around that is a quality process equals a quality product. Because software is volatile, you can't really measure it like a bridge. You can't measure stress and strain, and the bridge is very physical in terms of how you can measure what's happening on it. But in software, you can't. It's very volatile. So you measure it in terms of a quality process equals a quality product. So for all those people that are going, well, there's multiple views of the universe that are possible. And if I use AI, there's all those possibilities open up. And it could potentially, stop people from executing. I have a different way of looking at it. Charlie, if you like a cup of coffee made in a certain way, and we both have different views of the world, and you say to me, "Hey, Ronsley, can you make me a cup of coffee?" The chances of you getting a cup of coffee is very small the way you like it. But if you say to me, "Hey, Ronsley, can I get a cup of coffee and I'll like it made like this, do step 1, 2, 3," the chances of you getting the cup of coffee the way you like it is very, very high. So use AI like that. If you've been in business for a decade or even 5 years, you've got processes that already work.
Yeah.
Build on those processes. And if you're asking AI to do something, don't give it free reign, because just like you and I coming together to talk about anything, we've got all these different viewing points. But if you already have data on what works for your clients, what works for bringing leads into your business, what works for delivering to the clients that pay the money, or getting the transformation that you're saying that you want to deliver to them, if you already know those things, then use AI and give it the process rather than asking AI to come up with its own.
It
So there's a distinction there.
You're right. This is where context comes into play, right? So it's like when people say, "Are you afraid as a business coach that you're going to be replaced?" And I said, "For the time being, not at all." Because just exactly as you laid out, and we see this all the time. So somebody turns around and they said, "But I don't understand. I have built my cup of coffee. I like it this way, and I like this cream and blah blah blah. I like this. I have it all laid out, but I don't understand. I'm not getting the output that I want." And it's like, okay, and this is where the context comes in. What bean are you using? And it's like, oh, I didn't think about that. Where's the bean being harvested from? I didn't
Mhm,
think about that. Okay, no problem. How are you making the coffee? Are you using a Japanese style of processing this coffee, or are you using a Costa Rican style of processing this coffee? And it's like, I didn't think about that. How long has the coffee actually been brewing for? Because that actually creates a little bit of a different taste. And it's like, this is where we have the surface level of, oh, step 1 through 4. And then, guys like you and I, as we go a little bit deeper and bring different context, and even with the cup of coffee, you're more of a coffee connoisseur than I am. So, as much as I think I know about coffee, I could turn around and say, Ronsley, here you go. Here's everything I know about coffee, now down to nitty gritty details about the beans and the processing. But then you have other experience with coffee and you're going to say, yeah, but did you ever consider this? And it's like,
mhm.
oh, I didn't even know that was a factor of it. Like, I didn't know. And so you get a different result.
You're right. But again, it comes down to focusing on what you don't know and what you don't have versus what you already know and what you already have. And the tendency is to stand on this mountain of value and look at the next mountain and go, wow, that's really cool. And then you get off this mountain and start climbing a new mountain all over again. It feels really hard, rather than, really like going, oh, I've got all this value. I already know this. I don't have to start again. I don't have to get off this mountain. I just have to start climbing from where I am already.
Yeah.
And I'll get even better results rather than getting off this height and starting all over again. So just coming back all the way to the first question that you asked me about if we feel like we're getting left behind with the AI and everything changing, I suppose. I don't think that business owners should be focusing on how quickly AI is changing. I think they should be focusing on the business goals that they have
Yeah.
and how can they get that result. And you can get that result without the new technology that's coming out much, much better than you can trying to figure out a new technology.
Even something as simple as what you and I are talking about right now. For all the business owners, if all they need to know is how to ask questions and how to ask questions, which is a very easy thing to do, right? Inside of the platforms, then they're going to be miles ahead. To your point, you don't need to know how to create agents or, leverage API or buy a million different tools, but it's, if all to your point, Ronzi, and I really appreciate it because you're simplifying things even more, is just like if you just know how to ask the right questions. But then again, right? So this is where it takes another level of context, some more. It's like an F1 driver. When we did a podcast not too long ago with my son who's training to be a professional race car driver, right? Like he gets over the moon. He calls me up before he leaves the racetrack if he's able to get 0.1 seconds faster. So a tenth of a second faster, he's over the moon excited because that's often the difference between first place and 20th place at when you're at his level, right? And so when you start playing at a much higher level, it's like the quality of your input, the quality of the questions are a reflection of the quality of that output. And you can ask the exact same question to ChatGPT, and you're going to get a different response in ChatGPT as you would Grok, as you would Gemini, as you would Claude, and all these other platforms there. So this is like where there's a concept Marshall Thurber, an old mentor of mine, taught me, which is called mind perturbation. So he used to mentor Tony Robbins. And then after I spent a year and a half with Tony, then Marshall, asked me if I could work with him. And so what happened is like with enough of this stuff and you consume enough information that your mind begins to expand and you begin to see like so many more opportunities, but it doesn't start on day one. It starts by, try it, then try it again, and then try it again, and you begin to see like, oh, wait a minute, like I'm starting to pick up on these patterns. I'm starting to pick up on these ideas, and I'm starting to use it better.
Or do what you expect your clients to do, in the sense that if you expect that your clients to hire an expert to help them get where they want to go, then do the same. Like, I promise you, if you're just learning AI, there's so much you don't know. Like, if
Yeah.
you've just gotten into what I'm talking about, when I just got, I'm talking about the last 2 years, 2.5 years. If you're just there and you're still, with prompts and all this kind of, like, I feel like there's an element of, to you, what you were saying earlier, that I don't know all this stuff. And I meet people every week, Charlie, who say, Ronsley, I am really good with AI. And then 5 minutes later, they're like, oh, I didn't even know you could do that. And I'm like, that's
Yeah.
basic. That's
Yeah.
basic. Like, that's fundamental to how AI operates.
Yeah.
So how are you going out and claiming AI expertise when you don't know these fundamentals? So, if someone's looking to kind of use AI properly, I think getting someone who knows what they're doing and how it actually works, to use it in context of where they are in business. And that's going to make a huge difference, just in general, just straight away, rather than you having to find out what prompts are working. And it's definitely not about the prompts. It's more about the process of how you get the result. That's why if you say, this is the framework I'd like you to apply, you get a way better result, because it knows what you're trying to achieve. So maybe you can tell me, what are you seeing with your clients and where you think they need most help when it comes to execution, and maybe we can chat about what are ways that AI could help them get there.
That was a really, really good question. So, I hear questions all the time where there's this fear of, will I be replaced? You hear all the time about AI building websites, or AI that is coding software, or AI is doing all this other fun stuff. And so we have many clients inside of our board of directors program who came in initially having this fear of, my days are numbered
Mm.
because eventually I will end up being replaced. Now, for those people that just continue this outlook of, my days are numbered, I will be replaced, and they don't change that outlook, well, inevitably they're going to be replaced, and it is what it is, and so be it. But then there's going to be those people, and this is where the shift happens inside of the board, is they realize like, wait a minute, let's go to AI right now and let's start to ask a question. So, here's my company. How will my company be disrupted in by the year 2030, as an example? And they show all these areas of disruption. And now there's this little bit of a, oh my gosh, see, I knew it. But it's like, no, 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 hold on. AI will actually teach you how to compete against itself. So let's reframe the question. So, based on these disruptions, what are all the different ways that I can remain relevant now by the year 2030? What are the skills and the abilities? How does the company need to adapt and evolve and so forth? And then it begins to show you and begin to lay out the path of how your business will evolve and adapt in the future. And so, to answer your question, where I see my clients right now, as a CEO, your job primarily is to look into the future. And the example that I use all the time is that if you look at a captain of the cruise ship, the captain is standing back and they let their crew operate the throttle and the steering wheel and all the other elements of the ship. And the captain stands back. And the captain is already looking into the future and saying, okay, so we're going to leave from Miami and we're going to go to London. How do we get from Miami to London in the fastest way possible that's going to burn the least amount of fuel? At the same time, where are the weather patterns that are coming? Are there any weather patterns that may potentially put my crew and my guests at risk so that I can already plan ahead and change the course where necessary? And so they're looking into the future to make sure they get there faster, quicker, more profitably, and safer than anything before. But then, if all of a sudden, midway through their journey, a rogue wave comes in, the captain will turn around and they'll tell their crew, hey, step aside for a second. I need to step in, get us through this rogue wave, and then you take over. So, where we see these CEOs right now is they're spending so much time in the present moment, grabbing the steering wheel, that they are not spending enough time planning and strategizing for the future so they know where their business needs to adapt, where it needs to evolve to be able to get to where they need to be faster, safer, more profitably than they're at right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. However, I feel the ship analogy might be slightly different in this instance because the captain knows where the destination is.
Mm.
That's constant.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, like in business owners, that as CEOs, we're constantly trying to throw that to the destination being wherever is more profitable, wherever is more quicker, wherever. So it's rather than that. So in your example, even if we go with the example of, I've got my crew and I'm looking and I'm stepping back, they can't step back because everyone knows what the destination is. And these are some basics in business that I feel we get wrong is we allow AI to even disrupt our thinking of what focus looks like. And I'm asking everyone to not do that. I'm asking everyone, you already have your focus and stick with your focus because as a leader, the only thing that you can potentially give everyone is focus better than anything else. And give them that focus. And then you can up that focus by allowing them to do things that only you could potentially do with AI. The best way to get more profitable, more efficient, more quicker, more with where you're at right now is to train your people on how to use AI in a
Yes.
way that they can do their job better. Because if you're saying that you really care about your people, then it shouldn't necessarily be how profitable is the goal. It should be, could I give my team a 4-day work week? Could I train them with AI that they could do all their tasks better, quicker, faster, and could take a day off? Because in general, leaders say we care about our people, but the actions don't really align with the words. So I feel like rather than complicating the future, let's go for the future that you already have and make everyone aware of what that goal is. Because if you don't know what winning looks like, no amount of strategy is going to help because you're always not going to win because it's always a moving target. And then once you have your target and you know where your focus is, empower everyone to be competent. And you can today because AI can just be your sidekick.
We have the former commandant of the U.S. Army War College coming to speak to the board of directors in a few weeks. And if you know anything about that position of being commandant of the War College, it's one of the most prestigious positions that any military officer could ever have throughout their entire career. And he and I had the fortunate opportunity of chatting not too long ago. And I've never had better leadership training than at the U.S. Army War College. It was like my mind was blown. And so one of the things that he spoke about is a commander's intent. And a commander's intent is very similar to what you're talking about, Ronsley. In the military, it's like, okay, this is what success looks like. Now, unfortunately, how all these soldiers, thousands and thousands and thousands of soldiers, go from where they're at to achieving that commander's intent does not always go as planned. You may be traveling down a road and the bridge blows up. And it's like, well, damn. Well, if we said we had to stick to this path and the bridge is, we have to, no, it doesn't work that way. It's like, that's the commander's intent. Here's the rules of engagement. Like, we have to make sure that we get there. So, to your point, number one, not enough business owners have a commander's intent. Not enough business owners have clearly communicated what needs to happen in order to achieve that ultimate result. Now, to your next point, if they only trained the soldiers to say, go from point A to point B and don't deviate from this line, then we're going to lose a battle all day long. But when you're able to equip them with a way to expand their skills, like you said, using AI, particularly if you make AI a condition of employment, then you're giving them the tools and abilities for themselves to be agile and develop more skills and be able to go from point A to point B more successfully. And one of the ways we did this with another client runs a manufacturing company. We said, make this a condition of employment where you have to use AI. And the easiest way and the way we got them started is said, tell everybody, please familiarize yourself with blah, blah, blah company. I am whatever that role is. Say, I'm an administrative assistant for this company. What are the ways in which my role will be disrupted by the year 2030? And then go back and say, what skills and abilities do I need to develop in order to remain relevant in that role? And just start there and nothing else. And what that begins to do is tell them, okay, here's the commander's intent. This is my role in the company. And now I am starting to see right now what I need to do in order to improve.
Mm.
Just that. And then what are all the different ways that I can use AI right now inside of my role within the company? And within, I believe it was a 2 week period. Don't quote me on this. Now it's starting to get a little phasey on the data, but I think it was within a 2 week period, his margins went up by 1%. Maybe it's 2 months, 2 weeks, 2 months, something like that. But when you're in manufacturing, a 1% improvement in margin, it creates a massive competitive advantage. And he said the interesting thing is that what his team did on average is they took 10% of their everyday activities and they delegated that to AI. So 10% went. And he goes, it was an interesting experience because I was actually more curious to see what does the output actually look like once they start using AI. And he said it could have gone two ways. One way was they become lazy
Yeah.
and now they have more free time and they let AI do all the work for them. And then, they have more free time and we just don't get any more output. The other way is they use AI, delegate 10%, they get things done faster and they fill their time with something else that's more valuable, that has a higher ROT, return on time. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. They delegated 10% of their activities to AI and they replaced the additional time that they saved with activities that produced a higher ROT or return on time. So the employees became far more valuable, produced more at a higher level. The company became far more competitive and their margins increased while creating a significant competitive advantage in the industry when everybody else is still operating like dinosaurs.
I feel like listening to that, the thing that pops to mind is how we are still treating human resources like we're in the industrial revolution. We're still kind of going, if we give them AI, they could get lazy and could not be productive. But what we're giving them AI so that they can have a better life, so they can be more human, not be more machine-like. So the industrial revolution happened and allowed us to have industry. So because of that, it allowed us to do the same things over and over again. And we expected humans to do that because, we're still developing the machines. And now the machines have gotten smart enough that it can do these repetitive work. However, you keep talking about the CEOs that are kind of worried about replacement. The roles that will get replaced are the CEOs or the leaders who don't do these three things. They don't have courage, they don't have connection, and they don't have collaboration. Because everything else can be done. Everything else can be done by the machines. You also said at the start of this interview about how everyone's looking at content or marketing as the use case for AI. That's because they're trying to sweep under the rug the thing that they don't want to do, which is need for them to be brave. They don't want to put themselves in a position that courage is required. So let's hide behind something else. And let's use AI as a distraction and start talking about all the new things that are coming up with AI. Rather than that, let's look at this whole thing differently. Like, understand that everything is changing so quickly. And if you're looking at the changes and you're seeing all this API and this agentic workflows and you're seeing how quickly it's changing, the quickest way to make the biggest dent is a change of perspective. The quickest way. So as a leader, let's start to exercise. I'm not saying that I've gone over this and I'm immune to this and I'm pointing fingers at others. No, this is for me as much as it's for everyone else. And I think about this all the time. It's like, how can today I have more courage, create more connection, and create more collaboration? Because everything else will be commoditized. And if you're not thinking on those three lines, you will be replaced. And I'm telling you, like, there's no doubt in my mind that you will be replaced.
I do like that. And I was at an event out in California. And one of the interesting things, this was an event where there were other 7, 8, 9 figure CEOs all there, similar to what we talked about earlier in this podcast. We're there to expand our horizon, to be able to create new realities and so forth by just this intellectual collaboration with some of the most brilliant minds on the planet. And one of the concerns that came up when they were talking about AI was this hesitation for some of them to integrate AI within the organization because of this common fear with the employees that, well, we care so much about our employees, we're not going to replace you. So we're not going to integrate AI into your role. We're going to do things the way that we've always done things. Don't worry. AI is this, evil little technology that is going to replace people, and we're going to do things differently. And that really actually shocked me and surprised me, because if you're going to have the courage, as you mentioned, and the bravery and whatnot, we have to understand that we're beyond the point of thinking that AI is a fad and AI is going to be the tool. It's like closing your eyes and saying the internet is, we're not going to use the internet. We're going to stay good old fashioned, brick and mortar, and we're never going to go online. Eventually, you'll go away from the people who know how to use the technology, or, better, will replace you. I think if you really care about your people, to your point, Ronza, you care about your people, you owe it to them to support them in developing their skills and using the tools that they have available. Will their role be completely different 5 years from now? Yeah, probably unrecognizable. Probably unrecognizable. But what if you're giving the ability to develop new skills and to use different tools, then it will be unrecognizable, but they will be more valuable players to the business itself. And the business will be much better off, for it as well.
There's a great saying in the armed forces about good leaders create great leaders, or great leaders create good leaders.
Yeah.
In general, in business, it's more about do this my way, or this is the way I'm asking you to do it. And instead of having that, why not allow your team to do things themselves rather than rely on you? So instead of you kind of going, oh, let me take over, in those instances right now with AI, you have such a great opportunity to say, well, why don't you look at different options and come back to me? There's no better time to right now ask your people to be better leaders.
Yeah.
And empower them to be better leaders. And as a result, by the way, it's not about like telling them, it's more about you showing them what it takes. And I think it starts with reality, which is, AI is not going away. And also what you're talking about is, having that vision of the future, but not only having that vision. If you have that vision and you're not able to communicate that vision entirely and correctly to your people, you're asking them to solve like this 1,000-piece puzzle without showing them the cover, the picture on the front. It's like a big ask. So I think in general, when it comes to leaders and the people that report to the leaders, a perspective shift is really important. And then a shift in application of how you get the same results. I mean, you were talking about us doing your podcast. We've been doing podcasts for like 13 years now, probably longer. This is our 14th year. There was a time that, Charlie, we had 7 full-time transcribers on our team, and we had 14 content writers.
Wow.
Right? Now we have 0 transcribers, because over in the last year, we've gotten AI transcribers that are really good. And as of this month, we're not even paying for transcription anymore because it's freely available.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about, if your job title at one point was transcriber, that really doesn't exist anymore. Yes, things are going to change. And I don't want to, put like this nice veil over things and expect and say that it's not. It's changing very quickly. And it's primarily because you can get the result faster, quicker, better. So why not use that? Like, why not Like really make that the focus, and then empower your people who report to you to allow them to focus on that same outcome. Because then if they're focusing on that outcome, you're allowed to focus on vision. You're allowed to focus on other things that are really make you the person to lead.
I love that. Now I know we're pushing up against the clock. Let's wrap things up with one question, my favorite question, which is this is the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. What would you say is your biggest, best tip for our listeners today who want to take their business beyond seven figures?
Like, I feel as a leader, if you can sit in a room for 30 minutes and write what you know about your business and what you think are the roadblocks, because we all know we're trying to hide behind something. And if you ask the question, I ask this question to myself every day, by the way, Ronsley, what are you avoiding? It's my most favorite question, because every time I think I'm not, something comes up. So I feel as leaders, if we can do that, we can definitely move past seven figures, because there's enough information out there on how to do it.
Yeah.
There's a reason why we are stuck wherever we are stuck. So I feel, as much as this is an AI conversation, the key to using AI really well as a leader is to see inside us.
Yeah.
Look at what's stopping us, look at what our limitations are. And I promise you, if you kind of really lean into that, and I'm talking from experience, I've put out over 1,500 podcasts over the last 15 years. And in the middle of last year, I think it was in August or something, Gary said to me straight up, he's like, dude, you're not putting out enough content. I'm like, what? What an accusation to make. Are you kidding me? But then if I sat with it long enough, I realized that the ones that are getting the most attention are the ones that are putting out way more content than I am. What I did as a result of that was I decided internally that I was going to become a student of attention for the next 3 years. That was my goal. So I knew that I was going to become a student of attention, and I was not going to abdicate that to Facebook ad experts, to content people, to Reels people, to all these other people that I have been doing in the past. And I'm being very open here because I have done that. I've abdicated my responsibility of attention to other people. But even being truthful to myself right there has allowed me to unlock things that I promise you, there's no way I would have unlocked. For example, I get more messages now that my content is authentic than I've ever gotten. And I have to break news to them to say it took me 15 seconds and AI wrote a lot of this. But it's true. I just want to be honest that it can write so much better than I can write. I'm very good at speaking. I've been on stage since I was 10. I've been doing a lot of podcasts. I'm really good at speaking and conveying a point. Not so good at writing things. So my weakness was there where I, would abdicate that to a content writer, which I've taken back. And not only have I taken back, I have taken back, created a process and an AI to then empower my team to write the way I wanted it to be written, in my voice, in my style, in my XYZ. The second thing I've done is I've always abdicated Facebook ads to others and spent thousands and thousands of dollars on that. So I was like, let me take that back as well. Let's not be afraid of Facebook ads, Ronsley. So I paid a Facebook ad expert like $500 an hour. And I'm like, Jamie, teach me everything you know. And she taught me all the basics. And I used AI to apply a lot of the basics. And now we're getting leads. This is all me, by the way. There's no Facebook ad company. This is all Ronsley. We're getting leads for like $2 and $3 a lead right now from the major, like I'm talking about US, Canada, Australia, UK. And to take that over, I was scared, because what if I try again myself and fail? I have to abdicate again to someone else. But with AI, I could plug all these gaps and I could figure it out and I could understand and I could learn. So now I have no problem in giving it to someone and tell them exactly how I want it and how to achieve it. To answer your question, I feel like the answers are already inside us. We just need to be honest with ourselves.
I love that, man. I love that. Now, Ronsley, people want to learn more about you, the work that you do, and so forth. Where do we take them?
There's only one Ronsley Vaz, I'm pretty sure. So, if you Google, if you Google my name, you should get my work. But I'm the author of these 2 books. Amplify, which was in 2016, and Amplify AI. I consider myself an amplifier of people's genius and impact. So there's so much of content about me out there, podcast episodes, videos, write-ups. If you Google my name, that's a great place to start, and follow the breadcrumbs.
Got it. And then there's a We Are Podcast, right? So if they're interested in podcasting, they go to We Are Podcast, and they're interested in your AI, amplifyais.com. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow, we covered a lot. Ronsley and I played this game of intellectual ping pong on today's episode. And, we went from everything from, how to use AI to ask yourself, better questions, see context, see the future, empower employees, create advantages, all that other fun stuff. I think, if anything, one of the things that we can take from today's episode is AI is not as scary and overwhelming as you might think. You don't have to worry about all the latest technologies and agents and all that other fun stuff that the world seems to make you think you're missing out on. If you just look at the very basics and you consider, how do I just ask simple questions? How do I just put in simple requests and start there and then build from there and so forth? You're going to find yourself obtaining this competitive advantage that very few people have at this point. And none of the strategies we actually talked about were anything that was just complicated. It all comes from
No.
tapping into your brain, using the context from your own experience to be able to ask these different questions and kind of go from there. So, if anything, I hope for our listeners today, you get excited about AI. You start to see different possibilities about how this can help and benefit you, then just kind of go from there. Now, for additional tips, strategies, and information, you can also check us out at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. We have a whole bunch of resources, and you can go there and you can get a business assessment done on your business so you can see not only the most important things that you should be focusing in on right now, it'll also help to identify some of the constraints that are stopping you and holding you back. And I see Ronsley has one more thought that he wants to share as well. So I'm going to let him finish things up with this thought.
What I want to say is that if you're watching and you're listening and you want Charlie to make this a regular thing, then maybe we can do this every 2 months and have an AI conversation that helps you. So if that's you, then write back to Charlie and let him know that this was a good episode.
Awesome. I love that. I love that idea. This is fun. And we want to give you the things that you want to listen to. So I like what Ronsley said. If you like this episode, you want more of it, let us know. And we'll continue this game of intellectual ping pong. And I can promise you one thing, our next conversation will be dramatically different than this conversation right now.
Totally.
All right. Again, my name is Charles Gaudet with my good buddy Ronsley Vaz, and I will see you in another episode.
Thanks, Charlie.